Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my continuation of my book reading of Kidnapped. This is going to be the last chapter of this book. Chapter 5. David Comes Home. We decided that Alan would stay hidden in the fields while I walked to Queen's Ferry to find Mr. Rankaler. Alan promised not to come out until he heard me return. In order to be sure that it was me, he taught me to whistle a little Gaelic song. I have never forgotten it, and I think that it will run in my head when I lie dying. Every time it comes to me, I think of that last day of my travels with Alan whistling opposite me in the grass, while the first light of the sun touched his face. Soon I arrived in Queen's Ferry. When I saw people looking strangely at me and realized how dirty my clothes were, I began to feel afraid. Would Mr. Rankaler want to talk to me? How could I prove who I was? I had no papers with me. I was too ashamed to ask any of the townspeople for help, so I walked up and down not knowing what to do. By midday, I was tired and hungry. I stopped in front of a large house with clean windows, flowers in the garden, and a dog sitting on the doorstep. Suddenly the door opened, and a large, well-dressed, kind-looking man came out. "What are you doing here, my lad?" he asked. "I'm looking for Mr. Rankaler's house, sir," I answered. "Well, I'm Rankaler, and this is my house. Who are you?" "My name is David Balfour," I replied. "David Balfour," he repeated, and looked closely at me. "Come inside, Mr. Balfour, and we'll talk." In Mr. Rankaler's comfortable sitting room, I told him the story of my early life and explained that my uncle had paid Captain Hoseason to kidnap me and take me to sea. The lawyer listened carefully. "I heard that Hoseason's ship went down near the island of Mull 2 months ago," he said. "What have you been doing since then?" "I can easily tell you, sir," I replied, "but if I tell you, a friend's life may be in danger. Promise me that you will not get him into trouble or tell the soldiers about him." Although he looked a little worried at first, he promised, and I told him the rest of my adventures. While I talked, his eyes were closed and he seemed to be asleep. But I discovered soon afterwards that he had understood and remembered everything. When I spoke the name of Alan Breck, he opened his eyes and sat up. "Don't use unnecessary names, Mr. Balfour," he said. "A lawyer has to be very careful when discussing Highlanders. I don't think I've heard your friend's name very well. Let's call him Mr. Thompson." Of course, I thought, all over Scotland people are talking about Alan now that he's accused of the murder of Colin Campbell. I was sure that Rankaler had recognized his name, but I just smiled and continued my story, using the name of Mr. Thompson instead of Alan Breck. "Well, well," said the lawyer when I had finished, "what an exciting adventure. You will have to write it down one day. I had heard of you, Mr. David, from your friends in Essendon, who wrote to me when they had no word from you. Your uncle then told me that he had given you money to study in Europe, but I did not think that was true. I'm afraid we all know that Ebenezer Balfour is not a very good or honest man. Then Captain Hoseason appeared, saying that you were lost when his ship went down. But now I understand what really happened, and I know that you are David Balfour." He put a hand on my shoulder in a fatherly way and continued. "You'll want to know about the house of Shaws. Well, it's a strange story. When they were young, your father Alexander and his younger brother Ebenezer loved the same girl. Your father was always a kind, loving brother, so when the girl decided to marry him, Alexander left Fremont and let Ebenezer have the house and farmland. Well, I think it was a bad mistake. What happened was that your parents were always very poor, and Ebenezer became more and more interested in money. He never married, of course. Well, sir, I said, and now, what will happen? Now that your father is dead, replied the lawyer, you owe the house of Shaw's and the farms around it. But Ebenezer won't accept that, and it will be expensive if he wants us to prove it in court. In fact, we must stay out of court if possible. The kidnapping will be difficult to prove, and we don't want people asking questions about your friend, Mr. Thompson. No, I think we should leave Ebenezer at Shaw's, where he's been for 25 years, and ask him to pay you some money every year instead of giving you the house. What do you think? That sounds excellent to me, sir, I replied. But I think that we could accuse my uncle of kidnapping me. It's easier to prove than you think. Listen, I've described my plan to him. He was very pleased with it. Yes, Mr. David, very good. If we can catch Ebenezer like that, he can refuse to give you some of the money that belongs to you. He called to his secretary, Torrance. You must come with us tonight, Torrance. You'll have to listen to the conversation you hear and write it all down. And bring the Balfour papers with you. Then he turned to me. But if I accept your plan, Mr. David, I'll have to meet your friend, Mr. Thompson, who may be, I only say maybe, a criminal. He was silent for a while. Thinking deeply, that went on. Well, let's talk about something different. Do you know, the other day I saw Torrance in the street, but because I wasn't wearing my glasses, I didn't recognize him. My own secretary. I laughed happily at himself. I smiled politely. Perhaps he's getting old, I thought. But later that evening, when Mr. Rankeeler, Torrance, and I were walking out of Queensferry, the lawyer suddenly cried out, laughing. Well, how stupid of me. I'd forgotten my glasses, and I understood why he had told me the story about Torrance. Now he could meet Alan, a man wanted for murder, and if the soldiers asked him later for information, he could say that he never saw Alan clearly and could not possibly recognize him. When we arrived near Alan's hiding place, I whistled the little Highland song. When he appeared, we explained to him that we want him what we want him to do, and he readily agreed. So the four of us continued walking until we reached the house of Shaw's. It was a dark night, and there were no lights in the windows. My uncle was probably in bed. Mr. Rankeeler, Torrance, and I hid below the steps, near enough to hear any conversation, while Alan went straight up to the door and knocked loudly. After some time, my uncle opened his bedroom window and called down, in a frightened voice, "What do you want at this time of night? Who are you?" "I do not want to give you my own name," replied Alan, "but I've come to talk to you about someone called David." "What?" cried my uncle. And after a moment he said unhappily, "Will you come inside to discuss the matter?" "I will not," said Alan sharply. "It's here on his doorstep that we must talk. Come down and speak to me." After Ebenezer had thought about it, he decided to do what Alan wanted. It took him a long time to come downstairs and a longer time to unlock the heavy door, but at last we saw him in the doorway, holding his gun in his shaking hands. "Now," said Alan, "you're intelligent enough to see that I'm a Highlander. I have friends who live near the island of Mull. Well, it seems that a ship went down near there, and soon afterwards my friend found a lad half dead on the beach. Your nephew, Mr. Balfour. Since then, they've been taking care of him, and now they'd like to know, Mr. Balfour, if you want him back. You'll have to pay if you do. My friends are very poor." "I don't want him back," said my uncle. "He wasn't a good lad. I won't pay a shilling for him." "Blood thicker than water, sir," said Alan. "He's your brother's son. But if you don't want him back, will you pay us to keep him? And you'll have to hurry. I'm not waiting here all night." "Give me a minute to think, will you?" cried my uncle. "In 2 words, sir. Do you want us to kill or keep the lad?" "Oh, sir," cried Ebenezer, "don't talk of killing. Well, killing's easier and quicker and cheaper. I'm an honest man, said my uncle, and no murderer. Well, well, replied Alan, and now how much will you pay for us to keep him? First, I need to know how much you pay Hoseason to kidnap the lad. How much was it? Hoseason? Kidnap? What are you talking about, man? Screamed my uncle, jumping up and down on the doorstep. Hoseason himself has told me about it, said Alan calmly. Sure, you needn't pretend. Just answer the question, or you'll find my sword in your stomach. Don't get angry, cried my uncle. I gave him 20 pounds, that's all. But to be honest with you, he was going to sell the lad as a slave and keep that money, you see. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. That's excellent, said the lawyer, stepping forward. Good evening, Mr. Balfour, he said politely to the old man. And good evening, Uncle Ebenezer, said I. And it's a great evening, Mr. Balfour, added Torrance. My uncle said nothing, but stood there on the doorway with his mouth open. We took him into the kitchen and sat down to discuss matters. After an hour, it was all decided. My uncle accepted that Shaw's belongs to me, but he would stay there during his lifetime. He agreed to pay me money every year, and Mr. Rankeeler would check that he did. We all stayed at night at the house of Shaw's, but while Alan and Torrance and Mr. Rankeeler slept on the hard beds upstairs, I lay down on the kitchen chest, which now belonged to me. I, who had slept out on the hills for so many days and nights, was now the owner of a large house and several farms. My head was full of exciting plans and ideas, and I found it difficult to sleep. The next day, while Mr. Rankeeler and I were having breakfast together, I talked to him about Alan. Mr. Thompson is still in danger, said the lawyer. He must leave the country as soon as possible and stay with his friends in France for a while. I'll give you money to buy him a place on a ship. He'll have to stay hidden until then. And his clansman, James Stewart, who's in prison? I asked. I know he didn't kill Colin Campbell. I saw the murderer. I must speak for James Stewart in court. My dear boy, said Rankeeler, it's dangerous for anyone to speak for a Stewart in a Campbell court, but you must do what you think is right. I'll write you a letter to a good lawyer who will be able to help Mr. Thompson's clansman. He stood up. Well, I think that we're finished our business here. I must leave now and go back to my work. Come and see me often, Mr. David, and goodbye. Alan and I saw walking towards Edinburgh, while Mr. Rankeeler and Torrance turned back to Queensferry. We talked about what would happen next, and Alan was going to hide in the countryside near Edinburgh until it was safe for him to take the ship to France. When I had found him a place, I would send him a message. Then I planned to go back to the Highlands to help James Stewart return to his family. Alan and I walked slowly, and we were both thinking that soon we would have to leave each other, and we had been through so much together. We stopped when we came to the top of Corster Fine Hill and looked down at Edinburgh. We knew that this was the moment to say goodbye, and we stood there silently for a while. Well, goodbye, said Alan, and held out his hand. Goodbye, I said, and took his hand. Then I went off downhill. I did not look back at him, but I felt very miserable, and I wanted to sit down and cry like a baby. Edinburgh was full of noise and traffic and people, but I did not notice any of that. All the time I was thinking of Alan on the hill, and there was an ice-cold feeling inside of me. In the months that followed, I kept Alan's silver button safe and often looked at it, remembering our escape to the heather in the wild highlands, and I felt proud to call Alan Breck Stewart my friend, and I wondered if I would ever see him again. When I returned to the Highlands to help his clansman James, I found that my adventures with the stewards were far from finished. But that is another story. And that was the end of my book reading of Kidnapped. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.